If you have ever gone on a date and walked away thinking, "Why did I tell them that?" followed immediately by, "Why did I not tell them anything else?" and then capped the night with, "I have absolutely ruined this forever," then this story is about you. ADHD dating has a very specific rhythm. It starts with excitement, slides into chaos, pauses in silence, and ends in panic. Not because you lack social skills, but because your brain treats dating like a live experiment with no instruction manual and way too many variables. From the outside, he sees you sit down across from someone you like, trying to appear calm, relaxed, and normal. Internally, however, your brain immediately opens about 1,000,000 tabs at once. Attraction, curiosity, self-awareness, background noise, emotional stakes, the possibility of connection, the fear of rejection, and your ADHD brain, already sensitive to stimulation, responds by accelerating. Thoughts overlap, emotions stack, associations fire rapidly, and suddenly it feels like your entire nervous system is leaning forward, alert, and slightly on fire. This is where oversharing often begins. Oversharing in ADHD dating is not a lack of boundaries. It is a response to stimulation and perceived safety. ADHD brains run on dopamine, and new romantic interest creates a dopamine spike that feels electric. When someone laughs at your joke, mirrors your energy, or makes eye contact just a second longer than expected, your brain interprets that as connection. Connection signals safety. Safety tells your nervous system, "We can open up." And before your internal editor can intervene, your mouth starts sprinting. He watches you enthusiastically explain things that were never on the original agenda: childhood stories, personal fears, hyper-specific preferences. That one time you had a ferret, and somehow that turns into a detailed narrative about how the ferret escaped, stole a bagel, traumatized the household, and changed your understanding of trust forever. You realize halfway through that this is too much information, but it is already out there, fully formed, with emotional context and a moral lesson. This is not impulsivity for fun. This is your brain trying to bond quickly through authenticity. ADHD brains often bypass small talk because surface-level interaction feels pointless. Depth feels safer than ambiguity. Unfortunately, early dating thrives on ambiguity. Then, without warning, the system flips. Because ADHD does not only cause oversharing, it also causes undersharing. Suddenly, the same brain that would not stop talking goes completely quiet. Your date asks something simple like, "So what do you enjoy doing in your free time?" And your mind returns absolutely nothing, not one hobby, not one interest. You momentarily forget that you are a human with preferences. You sit there smiling politely while internally buffering, desperately searching your mental filing cabinet, and finding only static. This happens because ADHD affects working memory, especially under emotional pressure. Dating is pressure. You want to be liked. You want to say the right thing. You want to avoid mistakes. And that pressure interrupts retrieval. You know who you are, but your brain cannot access it on demand. This is not disinterest. This is a shutdown response. And then comes the panic. Panic is the third phase in the ADHD dating cycle. Oversharing, undersharing, then panic. Panic happens because your brain is extremely sensitive to uncertainty. ADHD brains struggle when outcomes are unclear. Dating is uncertainty in human form. You cannot predict how someone feels. You cannot control the timeline. You cannot guarantee safety. So after the date, your brain starts scanning for danger. He sees you replay every moment. The pause before you answered. The joke that landed slightly wrong. The ferret story. Definitely the ferret story. Time perception becomes distorted. That moment from earlier now feels recent, urgent, unresolved. ADHD time perception does not file things neatly into the past. Emotional memories stay active longer, which fuels rumination. This is where rejection sensitivity quietly takes over. Your brain is not saying, "You are bad." It is saying, "Let me analyze everything so we never feel pain again." Unfortunately, this analysis feels like an emotional fire alarm. The panic is loud because your care is genuine. At the same time, your brain is juggling far too much information. Dating requires constant task switching, listening, talking, reading facial expressions, managing tone, regulating emotions, remembering what you already said, trying not to interrupt, trying not to go silent. And while all of this is happening, your ADHD brain also insists on processing the environment. The entire cafe joins the conversation whether you want it to or not. The clinking of glasses, someone laughing too loudly, a chair scraping, the hum of the refrigerator behind the bar, the weird flicker of a light overhead, the person at the next table chewing with unsettling confidence. Your brain does not filter these out. It treats them all as equally important. He sees you lose your train of thought mid-sentence because the espresso machine just made a sound that feels emotionally aggressive. This sensory overload contributes directly to undersharing and shutdown. When your brain is processing everything at once, speaking becomes harder. Choosing words becomes harder. Emotional clarity drops. You may appear distant or reserved, even though internally you are overstimulated and trying to stay regulated. The emotional logic underneath all of this is surprisingly consistent. It goes like this: "I like them," leads to a dopamine spike, excitement and oversharing, "I do not want to mess this up," creates pressure, working memory failure, and undersharing, "Did I mess this up?" will lead to uncertainty, rejection sensitivity, and panic. This is not randomness. This is pattern. Dating overload happens because ADHD brains are interest-based, not importance-based. Dating is important, but it is unpredictable. It does not offer structure. It does not provide immediate feedback. That makes it cognitively expensive. Your brain wants clarity, stimulation, and emotional truth. But dating offers ambiguity, pacing, and restraint. That mismatch creates overload. When overload hits, the system oscillates between output and shutdown, talking too much or not at all, engaging deeply or dissociating briefly. Neither extreme is intentional. Both are regulation attempts. And yet, within all this chaos, there are strengths. He sees that people with ADHD bring intensity into relationships. They care deeply. They notice emotional details others miss. They are often highly empathetic, emotionally attuned, and creative communicators. Oversharing is often just honesty arriving too early. Undersharing is often caution showing up late. Panic is often love trying to protect itself. ADHD does not make dating impossible. It makes it vivid. What makes ADHD dating so exhausting is not that anything is broken. It is that your brain is doing too many jobs at once while pretending everything is fine. He sees you after the date, finally alone, finally quiet, and suddenly the noise gets louder. The cafe is gone, the conversation is over, but your nervous system is still running simulations. This is where time perception becomes especially important. For people with ADHD, emotional time does not move linearly. A moment that happened earlier can feel immediate and unresolved. Your brain does not stamp it as finished. It feels like something that is still happening. This is why panic lingers. This is why you replay conversations while brushing your teeth or lying in bed. Your brain is trying to place the memory somewhere safe, but it cannot find the correct shelf. At the same time, dopamine regulation continues to influence everything. Early dating often creates dopamine spikes followed by dips. When the spike drops, your emotional clarity drops with it. During the dip, doubt moves in. You start questioning your tone, your timing, your personality. He watches your brain go from "that went great" to "I should never speak again in record time." not because reality changed, but because your neurochemistry did. Uncertainty magnifies this effect. ADHD brains do poorly with waiting for a text, waiting for clarity, waiting to know where you stand. Uncertainty is interpreted as risk, and when risk is detected, your emotional alarm system activates. Panic is not drama. Panic is threat response. This is also where shutdown can appear again. After too much emotional processing, your system may temporarily go offline. You stop responding. You feel numb. You cannot decide what to say or whether to say anything at all. From the outside, it may look like disinterest. Internally, it is exhaustion. Your brain has spent hours switching tasks, regulating emotions, managing stimulation, and scanning for danger. It needs rest, and yet the irony is that the same traits causing this overload are the traits that make people with ADHD powerful partners. ADHD brains feel deeply. When someone matters, they matter fully. This is not shallow infatuation, it is emotional engagement. People with ADHD tend to love with intensity because they experience emotions vividly. They do not half feel things. They do not half care. That intensity can be overwhelming early on, but in a safe relationship, it becomes devotion. He also sees that ADHD brings emotional intelligence. People with ADHD often notice subtle changes in mood and tone. They pick up on unspoken cues. They are sensitive to emotional shifts because their brains are constantly scanning the environment. What causes overload in chaotic settings becomes attunement in close relationships. Creativity is another strength. ADHD communication is rarely boring. Conversations move in unexpected directions. Humor appears naturally. Stories are vivid. Even the infamous ferret story is not really about the ferret. It is about storytelling, connection, and making meaning. ADHD brains connect ideas quickly, which makes them engaging, memorable, and emotionally rich conversationalists. Then there is authenticity. Oversharing often gets labeled as inappropriate, but at its core, it is honesty without heavy filtering. People with ADHD struggle to perform versions of themselves that are not real. They want connection based on truth, not polish. When they open up, it is because they value sincerity. The timing may be off, but the intention is genuine. The emotional logic that once felt chaotic starts to make sense when viewed clearly. You overshare because you feel safe and excited. You undershare because you feel pressure and overload. You panic because you care, and uncertainty hurts. Nothing in this sequence is malicious or immature. It is regulation in motion. Understanding this changes everything. When you recognize that your brain is responding predictably, you can start responding to yourself with compassion instead of criticism. Oversharing becomes a signal to slow down, not a reason for shame. Undersharing becomes a cue for grounding, not proof of failure. Panic becomes information, not a verdict. He sees that the most important shift is not controlling these responses perfectly, but understanding them. When you know what is happening in your brain, you gain choice. You can name your needs. You can pace yourself. You can communicate openly instead of apologizing for existing. And the right person will not be overwhelmed by your depth. They will appreciate it. They will not be confused by your pauses. They will wait. They will not fear your intensity. They will recognize it as care. If this explanation felt uncomfortably accurate, you are not alone. There are many navigating dating with the same brain wiring, learning how to translate intensity into connection. And if you want more psychology like this, explained clearly, honestly, and with room for humor, subscribe. There is more coming, and it is made for minds like yours.